Siblings called me a fair baby and celebrated when my parents' marriage failed and told me to rot in. Hey, Reddit. So, this is one of those things I never thought I'd actually write out. But here we are. My childhood wasn't normal, and it wasn't because of money or school or anything like that. It was because of family, the kind that's supposed to have your back, but instead seems dead set on making sure you don't even want to exist. I'm not looking for pity. I just need to finally lay it out somewhere people won't tell me to let it go. I, 20 male, didn't exactly start life with the cleanest slate. By the time I was born, my mom already had a reputation in her side of the family, and it wasn't the good kind. Before me, before my older sister, she had been married to a guy who everyone described as the perfect man. Problem was, he got diagnosed with something serious, terminal. And while he was sick, while he was literally dying in bed, my mom started an affair with the guy who would eventually become my dad. I didn't know all this growing up, obviously. Kids don't get the dirty details. But the older half-siblings from my mom's first marriage, they knew. They were teenagers old enough to understand that their dad was fading away while their mom was sneaking around with another man. That's where the hatred started, and it never stopped. Their dad passed away. My mom didn't waste much time moving forward with my dad, the other man. My sister was born not long after, and then 2 years later, me. From day one, the label stuck. Affair babies. Not even kids yet, and we were already hated. Not because of who we were, but because of what we represented. My dad, my actual dad, not their dad, tried. I'll give him that. He wanted to build a new family. He wanted to take care of us, love us, and kind of repair the mess. But when you've got kids from the first marriage looking at you like you're the devil, and at your children like they're living reminders of betrayal, there's only so much you can do. My earliest memories of the half-siblings were cold shoulders and glares. They didn't hide it. They didn't even try to act civil. If I ran up to say hi at some family get-together, I'd get brushed off or hear a muttered gross under their breath. My sister, who was older than me but still a little kid, would get even worse. It all blew up at a family gathering when I was maybe 5 or 6. One of the big ones, where both sides were there. Paternal side, maternal side. Everyone stuffed into one of my aunt's houses for some holiday. We were in the living room, adults talking, kids running around. I don't remember what exactly led up to it, but one of the older half-siblings just snapped. He stood in the middle of the room, pointed at me and my sister, and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Those two aren't family. They're just the affair kids." The room went dead silent. My mom went pale. My dad stood up so fast his chair tipped backward. And me? I didn't even understand what affair meant yet. I just knew it was bad, because the way he said it dripped with venom. My sister started crying, and I remember her tugging at my sleeve to hide behind her. My dad went off. He told them to shut their mouths, told them that me and my sister were innocent, told them to act like decent humans, but the damage was already done. You can't take back words like that once they're thrown out in public. Half the adults awkwardly avoided eye contact, like they didn't want to pick a side. Some of them probably agreed with the older kids anyway, even if they wouldn't say it. I didn't really get it until later, when I asked my mom what affair kids meant. She brushed it off, said it was just mean words. But I noticed she didn't look me in the eyes when she said it. I pieced it together years later, when I was old enough to overhear whispers and connect dots. By then it was already tattooed on my back, a label I didn't choose but one I couldn't shake. That one outburst turned into years of being treated like I was dirty. Every time there was a family function, I could feel it. My dad would grip my shoulder a little tighter, like he was bracing himself for another comment. My mom would plaster on fake smiles, trying to pretend everything was fine. And the half-siblings? They didn't need to say anything after that. Just the looks they gave were enough to remind us what they thought we were. The weirdest part was how casual everyone else acted about it. Like, sure, the kids hate you, but that's just family drama. Brush it off. That's what I kept hearing. But when you're a little kid, getting told to your face you don't deserve to exist, you don't just brush it off. It sticks. That gathering was the first real taste of the war zone me and my sister were born into. A war we never signed up for. They didn't care that we had nothing to do with what our mom did. They didn't care that we weren't even alive during the affair. To them, we were guilty just for existing. That idea followed me and my sister everywhere. It wasn't just something they said once at a family get-together and then dropped. No, they hammered it into us like it was their full-time job. The older half-siblings didn't just call us affair kids, they upgraded it. Somewhere along the line, they started calling us homewreckers. Imagine being a 7-year-old and having someone in their late teens lean down, sneer in your face, and tell you that you ruined their life. I remember standing there frozen, not even knowing how to process it. Like, what life did I ruin? I wasn't even alive when all the drama went down. But to them, logic didn't matter. We were living proof of their mom's choices, and that was enough for them to spit hate every time we were in the same room. And it didn't stay confined to family gatherings either. That would have been bad enough, but at least we could have compartmentalized it. No, they followed us into school. Somehow, the older siblings managed to spread the whispers into the community, and kids talk. I'd be walking down the hall and hear someone mutter, "That's the affair kid." My sister got it worse. Girls her age told her straight to her face that she shouldn't even exist. And when we tried to deny it, the older siblings were right there to back the rumors up, almost proud of themselves for poisoning our reputation. I'll never forget one day in elementary school when a kid came up to me during recess and asked, "Why do your brothers and sisters say you broke their family?" That was the first time I realized the harassment wasn't just inside our house. It was bleeding into every corner of our lives. And no matter how I answered, I couldn't win. If I said it wasn't true, they'd laugh and say, "Then why does your own family say it?" If I stayed quiet, they took it as guilt. Either way, I walked away branded. My dad noticed, of course. He'd come home from work, see us quiet at the dinner table, and press us to talk. I'd tell him about kids at school making fun of me, about teachers pulling me aside with that look in their eyes like they pitied me. My sister would talk about how she got called names in the hall. Dad would get this tightness in his jaw, like he wanted to snap but didn't know who to direct it at. He'd tell us we weren't home wreckers, that we didn't do anything wrong. And I believed him when he said it, but it didn't erase the fact that the world around us treated us like garbage. Things reached a breaking point on one of my birthdays. I was maybe 9 or 10. Dad had rented out this little pizza place with an arcade in the back, the kind of spot every kid dreamed about having a party at. For once, I was excited. We invited a bunch of kids from school, and for the first hour it actually felt normal. I was running around with tokens, my sister was helping me with the games, and Dad was snapping pictures. Then one of my half-siblings showed up. Not invited, obviously, but they walked right in like they owned the place. At first, I thought maybe, just maybe, they were there to make peace. But no, they had already been spreading rumors about us around town for years. So some parents weirdly took their words seriously. They started whispering to them, dropping lines like, "Do you really want your kid hanging around with him? He's not even family. He's an affair kid." I didn't hear it at first, but I noticed the effect. Slowly, parents started pulling their kids away. "We've got to go," they said, fake smiles plastered on. Within half an hour, the place went from buzzing to dead silent. I remember standing by the arcade machines, holding a handful of tokens I hadn't used yet, looking around at empty chairs. My dad was fuming, I could tell. He stormed outside, probably to confront the sibling, but they were already gone. My sister came up to me, eyes red, and handed me one of her tickets like it would make things better. "You can get a toy," she whispered, like that would fix the fact that my birthday had been ruined. When we got home, I locked myself in my room. I didn't want cake. I didn't want presents. I just wanted to disappear. Because it finally hit me that no matter what I did, no matter how good I tried to be, I was never going to be seen as normal. To them, I was always going to be the kid who should have never been born. That birthday stuck with me. Not because of the cake or the presents or the games, but because it was the day I realized my half-siblings weren't just out to hurt us in private. They wanted the world to see us the way they did, as home wreckers, as mistakes, and they weren't going to stop until everyone else believed it too. By the time I hit middle school, it felt like me and my sister were carrying this giant scarlet letter on our backs that we didn't even earn. It ate at my dad. You could see it in his face. He'd come home from work, loosen his tie, and just sit at the table staring into space. He wasn't the kind of guy to cry in front of us, but the stress was written all over him. He knew we were getting bullied. He begged my mom to step in, to say something to the older kids to make them stop. But she didn't. She'd shrug it off, say stuff like, "They're just upset, they'll grow out of it." Except they didn't. They just got meaner. The fights between my parents started small. Arguments at night when they thought we were asleep. Whispered voices that turned into raised ones. I'd sit in my bed with the blanket pulled over my head, listening to my dad say things like, "Do you see what this is doing to them? Do you even care?" And my mom's flat tone in response, "It's not my fault how they feel." It grew from there. By the time I was 12, the fights weren't behind closed doors anymore. They were in the kitchen, the living room, anywhere. My sister and I would sit at the top of the stairs, listening to plates clatter against countertops and doors slam. Dad would argue that we were getting destroyed emotionally, and Mom would argue that she was tired of being painted as the villain. To her, the solution was pretending it wasn't happening. To my dad, that was betrayal all over again. Then, the divorce hit. The day it became official is burned into my memory. Papers on the table, my dad pacing the living room, my mom sitting stiff in her chair refusing to look at him. He told us he was sorry. Not sorry that he was leaving her, but sorry that we had to deal with all this when we were just kids. I remember him hugging me so tight it almost hurt. He whispered, "None of this is your fault." And I knew he meant it. But the truth was, fault didn't matter. The half-siblings had already made up their minds about us. The worst day of the whole divorce came when things blew up at the house. It was one of those nights where the yelling could probably be heard down the block. My dad had just come home from another exhausting day at work, and he was met with my mom unloading on him. She accused him of failing as a husband, failing as a father, everything she could throw at him. I remember standing with my sister in the hallway, clutching her hand, trying not to cry. And then we heard it, laughing. Not from my parents, but from outside. My dad stormed to the front window and yanked the blinds open, and there they were, my older half-siblings, standing on the sidewalk, pointing at the house, laughing and clapping like they were watching a circus. One of them even cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted, "How does it feel, huh? Finally falling apart, just like you deserve." My sister started sobbing. I pulled her into the hallway, away from the window, but the damage was already done. My dad lost it. He bolted outside so fast the door nearly came off the hinges. I don't remember everything he said, but his voice was booming, raw anger spilling out after years of trying to keep it together. He shouted that we were his kids, that we didn't deserve this, that they were monsters for laughing while two little kids cried inside. The neighbors came out to watch. Some tried to intervene, telling everyone to calm down. My mom didn't move. She stayed in the kitchen, acting like none of it was her problem. And me? I peeked from behind the curtain, watching my dad's face turn red with fury while my half-siblings just smirked. They knew they'd won. They knew all they had to do was show up and rub salt in the wound, and they'd break him down even more. That night, he told us he was filing for the divorce officially. He said he couldn't keep doing it, couldn't keep watching us get torn apart while mom sat on the sidelines. He promised he'd always be there for us, but you could tell the fight had drained something from him. My sister crawled into his lap and cried until she fell asleep. I sat next to him, staring at the wall, wondering how people who were supposed to be family could enjoy our pain so much. That was the moment I realized the older siblings didn't just hate us. They fed off our misery. It was entertainment to them. They weren't going to stop until there was nothing left of us to break. 4 and 3 years later, they got their biggest chance. My dad passed away. He'd been sick for a while, though we didn't really know how bad it was. He tried to hide it from us, tried to keep his smile around me and my sister, but I could see it in his eyes. He was exhausted, both from the stress of everything with my mom and the constant harassment from my half-siblings. And then one morning, he just didn't wake up. I remember my aunt shaking me awake at Dad's house, her face pale, telling me and my sister to come downstairs. The whole place smelled like coffee and sadness. People were crying in the kitchen. My dad's chair at the table was empty. That's when it hit me. He was gone. The funeral was brutal. Paternal family came in droves. His brothers, cousins, old co-workers. They all spoke about what kind of man he was, how he deserved better than what life gave him. My sister clutched my hand the entire time, sobbing into her dress. I didn't even cry. I just felt hollow, like a part of me had been scooped out and tossed in the dirt with him. My mom sat stiff in the front pew, staring at the casket like it was a burden. She didn't cry either. She looked more annoyed than anything, like this was just another thing she had to deal with. I don't know if she was numb or if she really just didn't care anymore, but to me and my sister, it felt like we'd lost both parents in one day, one to the grave and one to apathy. That's when the half-siblings came crawling back into the picture. For years, they hadn't spoken a word to us unless it was to spit insults. But after the funeral, one of them reached out. A phone call first, then a message saying they wanted to meet. They said things like, "We know you lost your dad. We know how hard this must be. We've been through this before. We just want to reconnect and apologize for everything. We're family." I should have smelled the setup from a mile away, but I didn't. My sister didn't either. We were desperate for some kind of stability, some kind of normalcy. And when people tell you they want peace after years of war, a part of you wants to believe it. So we said yes. They invited us to dinner at one of their houses. My sister spent hours getting ready, like she was finally going to have the siblings she always dreamed of. I kept telling myself to stay cautious, but deep down I hoped too. I wanted so badly for it to be real, for once in my life. We walked into that house, and at first it felt normal. Plates on the table, food steaming, smiles plastered on their faces. They hugged us, asked how we'd been, acted like none of the past ever happened. I let myself relax just a little. Then halfway through the meal, it all changed. One of them raised their glass and said, "Let's make a toast." Everyone else joined in, glasses clinking. My sister and I awkwardly lifted ours. I thought they were about to say something about family, about starting over. Instead, I'll never forget the words that came out of their mouths. To karma. To what comes around, goes around. To your dad finally getting what he deserved. The room erupted in laughter. They weren't toasting to family. They were celebrating my dad's death. My sister froze, tears spilling down her face. I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. I slammed my glass down so hard it cracked. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I shouted, my voice shaking. They smirked. One leaned back in their chair and said, "Why are you surprised?" He was a homewrecker. Now he's rotting, and you two can finally feel what we felt. Another one chimed in, "Take a taste of your own medicine." My hands were trembling with rage. I wanted to leap across the table and smash that smug grin right off their face. But my sister grabbed my arm, begging me not to. Her whole body was shaking, and she just whispered, "Let's go. Please, let's go." We got up and left without another word. The laughter followed us out the door, echoing in my ears like a nightmare. That night, she asked me, "Why do they hate us so much? Why do they enjoy this?" And I didn't have an answer. All I could say was, because to them, we'll always be the mistake. From that point on, I knew there was no chance at reconciliation. They didn't just dislike us. They wanted us destroyed. They wanted us to suffer as much as possible, even if it meant mocking the one parent we had left who actually cared about us. It wasn't just hate, it was cruelty. And it was clear as day now. Whatever family they pretended to be, they had forfeited that title the second they raised their glasses and toasted to my dad's death. After that night, something inside me just shut off. I stopped wishing for siblings who cared. I stopped hoping they'd ever treat us like family. To me, they were strangers with my blood, nothing more. But instead of leaving us alone, they doubled down. My teenage years were supposed to be awkward and normal, like everyone else's. Sports, homework, maybe a girlfriend here and there. Instead, they turned into a survival game. The half-siblings didn't just stick to family gatherings anymore. They started showing up in places where they didn't belong. It started with school. I'd be walking to class and notice one of them hanging near the parking lot, pretending they were just passing by. But it wasn't casual. They'd stand there smirking, arms crossed, like they were waiting for me to see them. Sometimes they'd yell across the lot, stuff like "Home Wrecker Jr." or "Mistake Boy." My friends didn't know how to react. Some laughed nervously, others drifted away from me because they didn't want the drama. My sister had it worse. She was in high school when the stalking really kicked in. A couple times, she caught them following her home. She'd turn around and they'd just stand there on the sidewalk, staring at her, grinning like it was some kind of sick game. She told Mom once, but of course, Mom brushed it off. "They're your siblings, they're not dangerous." Easy for her to say. She wasn't the one being followed down dark streets. The mall incident was the one that broke her. We'd gone there together on a Saturday, just trying to be normal kids. She wanted to buy a new outfit with babysitting money, and I tagged along. We were in the food court when one of the older siblings spotted us. He walked straight over, loud enough for everyone around to hear, and said, "Look, it's the mistake parade." The people around us started staring. My sister went pale, her tray shaking in her hands. He leaned in closer, grinning at her, and hissed, "You ruined everything! You should have never been born." She dropped her food, burst into tears, and ran out of the mall. I got in a verbal fight with them until the security came and broke us off. I chased after my sister, but by the time we got outside, they were gone. Just vanished like a ghost after dropping their poison. That night, I sat on my bed fuming. I kept replaying it in my head, his grin, her tears, the way people stared at us like we were freaks. I realized something. No one was going to save us. Not Mom, not the school, not even Dad anymore. It was on me. So I started writing things down. Every time they showed up, every insult, every rumor. At first, it was just a notebook I kept hidden under my mattress. Dates, times, what happened. Then I started getting smarter. I borrowed my cousin's old camera phone and started snapping pictures from a distance whenever I caught them lurking. Screenshots of messages they sent online, too. I backed everything up onto a USB drive and cloud storage, stashing duplicates in case one got lost. I didn't tell my sister at first. She was already fragile, and I didn't want her to think I was obsessed. But eventually, she found the folder on my desk. Instead of getting mad, she sat next to me and said, "Keep doing it. We might need this one day." And from then on, she helped. If she got a text, she'd forward it to me. If she noticed one of them following her, she'd write down the time and place. It became our secret project, our way of fighting back without throwing punches. The more I documented, the more I realized just how much they'd been in our lives, shadowing us. They weren't just angry siblings venting now and then. They were fixated. Stalking us became their hobby. It was creepy, dangerous even. But for the first time, I felt like I had a weapon. Every photo, every page in that notebook, it all went into a folder I labeled Truth. One time, one of them tried to corner me outside school. He shoved me against a locker, muttering about how I ruined his life. I didn't fight back. I just pulled my phone in my pocket, held it up and snapped a picture of him mid-shove. His face drained. He backed off real fast. That's when I knew I was onto something. Evidence scared them. By the time I was 17, that folder was thick. Printed photos, handwritten notes, backed up files full of screenshots. I kept it hidden at my aunt's house just in case. Because in the back of my mind, I knew a day was coming when it wouldn't just be harassment anymore. They'd cross a line, and when they did, I'd be ready. Looking back now, I think building that folder is what kept me sane. It gave me control in a situation where I otherwise had none. My sister leaned on me, and I leaned on the fact that I was quietly stacking the deck against them. They thought they were untouchable, that no one would ever believe us over them. But I had proof, and sure enough, the day would come when I'd open that folder and finally use it. It started on what was supposed to be a good night. Me and my sister got invited to a dinner party hosted by some of our paternal relatives. My girlfriend was there, and so was her family. It felt like one of those rare chances where life seemed normal. People laughing, food on the table, my aunt telling dumb stories about when she and my dad were kids. For a while, I actually let my guard down. But of course, somebody had to ruin it. Midway through dinner, one of my relatives casually brought up the older half-siblings. Have you two thought about reaching out? It's been years. Maybe it's time to bury the hatchet. My sister froze, fork halfway to her mouth. Her eyes glossed over, and I knew she was 2 seconds from breaking. I put my hand on her arm, but it was too late. She pushed her chair back and walked out of the room, tears already sliding down her cheeks. The sound of the front door clicking shut hit me harder than any insult ever had. I turned back to the table, furious. "Do you even know what you just did?" I said. The room went quiet. "They're still family," one of them muttered. "Time heals. Maybe enough has passed." "Time doesn't erase trauma," I shot back. "They told us to our faces they wished we were dead. They celebrated when our parents split. They mocked my dad's death. They followed us around town like stalkers. You think that just goes away because a few years passed?" My girlfriend's mom leaned forward, frowning at the others. "You shouldn't push them. Clearly, this isn't something you can just sweep under the rug." But the relative doubled down. "It's not a dinner topic. You shouldn't dump all that heavy stuff on people who are trying to help." I laughed bitterly. "Oh, so I'm supposed to just nod and smile while you tell me to go hug the people who tormented me my whole life?" Got it. The air was tense the rest of the night. I couldn't even enjoy dessert. I left early with my girlfriend, my sister riding in silence in the back seat. A couple of days later, after we'd tried to shake off the tension from that dinner, I suggested we go visit Dad's grave. It had been a while, and I figured it might help ground us again. He was the one person who had ever truly fought for us. Maybe standing by his headstone would remind us that we weren't as alone as we felt. We pulled up to the cemetery, parked, and walked the familiar path to his grave. Except when we got there, my sister stopped dead in her tracks. The headstone was spray-painted, big, sloppy red letters scrawled across the front. R.I.P. Homewrecker. My stomach dropped. My sister let out this broken sob that didn't sound human. I dropped to my knees, running my hands over the stone like maybe I could wipe the words away with my skin. But they were burned into my brain already. They had finally crossed the line. "We're reporting this," I said, my voice low but steady. "Right now." We drove straight to the police station. I pulled out my folder, slapped it on the counter, and started talking. I explained everything. The years of harassment, the stalking, the screenshots, the pictures. The officer flipped through the folder, eyebrows raising higher and higher with every page. My sister sat beside me, trembling, but nodding along. "This is a lot," the officer admitted. "We'll open an investigation. Vandalism is a crime, and if what you're saying about harassment and stalking checks out, there may be more here." For the first time in years, I felt like we weren't alone, but I wasn't done. That night, I drove to one of my half-siblings' houses. My sister begged me not to, but I couldn't sit back anymore. I needed them to know they'd gone too far. I needed to look them in the eye and make it clear this wasn't going to slide. When I showed up, two of them were outside, leaning against their car. They smirked as soon as they saw me. Look who it is. Little Homewrecker Jr., one of them taunted. I walked right up, chest tight but steady. This ends now. You went too far. They laughed. What are you going to do about it? Before I could answer, one of them lunged forward and swung. His fist caught me in the jaw, snapping my head to the side. Pain exploded down my face, but something inside me snapped too. Years of being mocked, stalked, bullied, humiliated. Every single moment boiled up all at once. I didn't even think. I just reacted. I grabbed him by the shirt and shoved him back hard into the hood of the car. He swung again, but I ducked and drove my knee into his gut. He doubled over, gasping. The other one jumped in, fists flying. I caught his arm, twisted, and kicked his legs out from under him. He hit the pavement with a grunt. Adrenaline was pumping through me like fire. They weren't scary anymore. They weren't untouchable. They were just pathetic cowards who finally got what they'd been asking for. I stood over them, chest heaving, fists clenched, daring them to get back up. They didn't. You ever touch me or my sister again? I growled. I'll make sure you regret it. And next time, I won't stop at just defending myself. I left them lying there and drove straight back to the police station, jaw aching, but heart steady. I filed a report, this time not just about the vandalism, but the assault too. The officers listened carefully, jotting down every detail, and when I handed them the fresh bruises on my face as proof, plus my years of documentation, they didn't brush it off. They took it seriously. Walking out of that station, my sister at my side, I finally felt the shift. This wasn't just me and her suffering in silence anymore. The system was watching now. And my half-siblings? They had no idea the storm that was coming for them. The police didn't waste time after we reported the vandalism and assault. I turned over my truth folder. Photos, screenshots, dates, everything. The detective flipped through it with a look that said, "Finally, this makes sense." Within a week, they had warrants out. What followed wasn't instant justice. It was months of hearings, paperwork, and court dates. Restraining orders were granted early on, which gave me and my sister our first real breath of relief. But the actual trial and sentencing dragged on, as these things always do. The first time I saw my half-siblings in court, I almost laughed. They looked nothing like the smug bullies who used to corner us. They sat stiff in the defendants' chairs, trying to look innocent, but the evidence was stacked high. The prosecutor laid it all out. Stalking, harassment, the vandalism on my dad's grave, and the assault where one of them swung at me first. The judge wasn't buying their excuses. Their lawyer tried to spin it as family drama, but the messages and photos didn't lie. The courtroom went quiet when their texts were read aloud. Jokes about making us suffer, plans to show up outside the house, and even that disgusting toast at dinner after Dad's death. People gasped. Their friends and even spouses in the gallery looked horrified. That was justice in real time. Their cruelty dragged into daylight. The judge issued restraining orders on the spot. No contact, no showing up near us, no social media harassment. Watching my sister breathe for the first time without checking over her shoulder was the payoff I didn't even know I needed. She hugged me in the hallway after and whispered, "We're finally safe." They pled not guilty at first, but it didn't matter. Evidence doesn't care about denial. Photos of them lurking near our school, screenshots of threats, and even a neighbor's ring cam showing the assault. It all nailed them. The judge found them guilty on vandalism, harassment, and assault. The sentences weren't life-ruining, but they stung. Heavy fines, community service, mandatory counseling, probation, and permanent restraining orders. And the criminal record? That's theirs to carry forever. The social fallout hit almost as hard. Their so-called friends backed away, embarrassed to be tied to them. One of their marriages cracked under the weight. Spouse walked out, saying they didn't sign up for public humiliation. People in their community whispered. They weren't the tough, untouchable older siblings anymore. They were just adults with court records, and no one left to clap for their cruelty. The best part? Paternal relatives finally admitted we'd been right all along. The same ones who pushed blood is blood finally saw the truth in black and white. One cousin even apologized, saying, "I didn't realize it was that bad. I didn't forgive him, but I accepted it." At least nobody at family dinners would ever push reconnection again. Walking out of that courthouse with signed restraining orders in my pocket, I felt lighter. Years of fear turned into paper that legally kept them away. It wasn't dramatic movie-style revenge, but it was real. It was accountability. They had chosen cruelty, and now they had to live with the consequences. Life moved forward. My sister started smiling again. She went to college orientation and, for once, didn't flinch when people asked about family. I stopped carrying the evidence folder everywhere and locked it away in a safe at my aunt's house. It had done its job. A few weeks later, we had a small dinner with the people who mattered. My aunt, my girlfriend, her family, and a couple of Dad's old friends. It wasn't flashy, just good food and laughter. My aunt raised her glass and said, "To the family you choose." That hit home. That was the closure. Looking back, revenge didn't come from throwing punches. It came from finally proving we weren't crazy, that everything we endured was real and unacceptable. It came from the law saying, "You were right," and they were wrong. It came from watching them lose the power they held over us for so long. They toasted my dad's death once, but the last toast belonged to me and my sister. Quiet, private, surrounded by people who actually loved us. They had forfeited the right to call themselves family years ago. And now, with the courts backing us, they could never touch us again. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way.